Welcome to a Fresh Story podcast. This season, we're digging into all things divorce. We'll be discussing the ins, the outs, the nitty-gritty, all that stuff we don't talk about. Well, we're going to talk about it. Join us for everything you've always wanted to know about divorce, but were afraid to ask. Remember, you're not alone. Let's dive into divorce together. Hello, everyone. Olivia here. Money, 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 money. It's the first thing our mind jumps to when we think about divorce. How much will this cost? Can I even afford to live as a divorced person? What will happen to our home? The topic of real estate and assets and property and money intertwined with divorce can be really freaking scary and triggering to our mind, body, and soul. And I understand because I've been there, as have many, many people. So how can we help calm your nervous system down a little? By getting sound advice and guidance from experts, of course. On this episode of the divorce season, we're covering everything you always wanted to know concerning estate planning, real estate, investments, property, assets, money, and your divorce experience. Some of the questions covered in this episode include, how can a realtor assist me in selling our marital home during the divorce? What factors are considered when determining the division of real estate in a divorce? What are the different types of alimony or spousal support arrangements? How is alimony determined and what factors are considered in awarding alimony? What is even alimony? How is property divided during a divorce, and what factors are considered? How can I protect my assets and my investments during the divorce? Should I update my will and other estate planning documents? Should I update my healthcare proxy or power of attorney? The Fresh Starts experts that you'll hear in this episode include Emily Clancy Laporto, a licensed real estate agent with Sarahant; Mara Bernstein, founder of Divorce Different, accredited collaborative divorce lawyer, divorce mediator, and divorce consultant; Jolie Vacchi, divorce lawyer and mediator, founder of Foundations Family Law and Mediation Center; Jen Reed, financial planner and coach, founder of Base Financial Planning; and Cynthia Cartier, divorce attorney and mediator, founder of Connecticut Mediation and Arbitration Services. Remember, you can find more info on divorceguide.co, divorcemonth.com, and get in touch with all of these experts on freshstartsregistry.com/experts. And don't forget, you're not alone in this process. We're all here for you. So let's get started.
I am Emily Clancy Laporto. I'm a realtor with Sarahant, the most followed real estate brand in the world, and I work with buyers and sellers going through divorce.
Okay, Emily, I have some questions from readers for you. Somebody wrote in and said, my partner and I decided to divorce, and we have a house that we own together. I feel totally overwhelmed on how to handle this division of the estate. How can a realtor assist me in selling our marital home during the divorce? So, Emily, what do you think?
Well, I mean, let's be honest, having to sell your home for many people sucks, right? Whether it's because of divorce or, life change of another kind, it sucks. There are memories there. You probably spent a lot of time making this house a home, and it's really hard to let go of. And even if your divorce or separation is not contentious, the home is like a physical manifestation of the union and now of the split. But working with a realtor will make this complex and emotional process so much easier for several reasons. And I'll tell you some of those reasons. So one of them, and this is, I think, one of the most important ones, is I'm a neutral party. As a realtor, my job is to make sure that my clients get the best deal on their sale. So I'm not aligned with either side of the divorce, right? So as your realtor, I'm going to be a neutral party. I'm going to act sort of as a mediator in turn to reduce, this can in turn reduce conflict. Um, it may not be easy to like agree on a listing price. One of you may be hoping to get a big piece of equity from the sale of the home. For most people, your home is your highest valued asset. The other party may just want to sell fast and kind of get it over with. So again, as that neutral agent, I can bring these two poles together and hopefully satisfy everyone. Another reason is I can bring everyone together that's involved. So, again, selling a home is a major undertaking, regardless of this other factor. So with the divorce on top of that, adding complexities, it's a lot to handle. As a real estate agent, I'm going to work with your attorneys. I can even work with a financial advisor to ensure the sale of the home aligns with legal and financial aspects of your divorce settlement and just your general financial needs. Um, as a real estate agent, I'm also going to be negotiating with buyers, evaluating offers, and helping you navigate through these rough waters, with the divorce and indoor separation on top of it all. I'll be your fiduciary. So we're working together to satisfy your divorce and separation agreement and to help you choose and accept an offer that works for both you and your partner. Another thing that a realtor can assist you in is increasing market exposure. And this is really an understatement because if you're not working with an agent, not working with a realtor, you're going to have very minimal market exposure. Besides being able to list in the MLS, which is a database that all agents have access to. So as a New York agent, if I post a property on MLS, every agent in New York is going to be able to see that property. And those agents are going to be the ones bringing buyers to your home. And on top of that, again, I said in the beginning of the call, Sirhan is the most followed real estate brand in the world. So when I market homes, the exposure is exponential. More visibility means we're going to attract more buyers. The more buyers you have in the quote unquote pool, the better the offers are going to be.
It's interesting, Emily, because now you're saying that and I'm thinking, I could see how when you're going through a divorce, people might say, well, let's just sell it ourselves, right? Save the money. But that's really not a good decision to make, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah. It can even be a wash, because you may not get the price you're looking for, or you overprice your home and it just sits there and drags out. And that is probably in turn dragging out the divorce settlement too. So, it really is a win. I think as a whole, and I wasn't an agent my whole life. And I can tell you working with agents as a buyer or seller in the past, it really, really saves you time and money at the end. And that's an important part of divorce, right? It's a huge expense. And so whatever we can do to try to get things moving quickly is always going to save money.
Yeah, and I can't imagine trying to sell a house with the person you're also going through a divorce with without having that. And I like that you said too, it's almost like you're building that mini hype team of the estate, right? So then you would be the one in charge of that, because it's so many people involved, the mortgage lender, the bank, and all these things. And it's, while you're going through a divorce, so much to handle. So
it really is.
That's really helpful. So Emily, when we're talking about selling a home in a divorce, I mean, generally speaking, right, what factors are considered when determining the division of real estate in a home? How do they kind of walk through that in a very general way?
Sure. So you have to think of your home as sort of multiple pieces, right? We're looking at this as a whole. First of all, you absolutely need to be working with a lawyer from the beginning. Don't wait until you have an accepted offer. You want to have this person on board with you. And that can be maybe your attorney you have a separate attorney for your divorce and for real estate. Maybe you're working with the same person, but get that person involved from the very, very start. If you have a large amount of marital assets, investments, and things, you probably also want to incorporate your financial advisor because, again, we're looking at this division from a very, very high level and looking at all the parts and pieces. So, maybe you've decided to sell the home, as in like neither of you is going to stay in the house, or maybe one of you plans to stay in the home, right? So that's one big part of how that property is going to get divided. But in either case, you're going to need to determine current market value. That's where a realtor is going to come in hand. You need to know how much equity is in the house if there's a mortgage. So you're going to need to get in touch with your whoever did your financing to begin with, or whoever you would maybe be doing financing with in the future to see how much you can afford if you plan to buy again. Um, is the house collateral for any debt that you may have incurred on the house while you were there, or as a marital couple, rather? Things like home improvements, maybe you financed a new roof, those sorts of things. All those together affect the value of the property and what will need to be divided and negotiated in the settlement. So it's all these parts and pieces. And again, trying to do that as just a consumer can be really, really lofty. And you're already dealing with the divorce and or separation. So again, we want to make sure that we're looking at that holistically, and an agent can help you do that. Working with an experienced agent who understands the divorce process as an agent and also firsthand, someone like me. So I'd always try to work with someone who themselves has been through a divorce or separation. We'll go over all this. And, as mentioned, we're going to work with your divorce lawyer, your real estate attorney, so that all your bases are covered. Everyone's needs are being met. And again, all those divisions of real estate that need to happen will be taken care of and accounted for.
Yeah, and what I'm really hearing from you on this too is like, even if you stay in the marital residence, you still need a realtor to help you figure out, right? So I think there's a misconception maybe from a lot of people who do stay in the marital residence and maybe the partner leaves, like, I don't need a realtor, but you really need a realtor on your hype team for your divorce no matter what.
Absolutely. Again, I think that's going to be your source for the current market value of the home. You could get the house appraised. That's not going to be how much it sells for. It might sell for more than that. It may sell for less than that. We need to look at current market conditions, and an agent can help you do that. And it's really the best way, again, to have sort of a neutral party that's making those determinations, because if it's between the two of you, I promise you it's not going to land where
No.
everybody's happy. Yeah.
No. And I love
Yeah.
too, and I think you touched on this, but it is really important to develop a relationship with a realtor that you're comfortable with, so that if you do choose to sell, like in my case, I stayed for 3 years and then I sold. I know you were similar, that, you have somebody down the line that you already trust and have that deep relationship with.
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't know an agent out there that wouldn't want, be willing and happy to participate in this phase. Again, even if you weren't ready to sell yet, because it's important for us to, again, I used the word fiduciary earlier, to be a fiduciary for you and know that we can trust down the line when there are needs for sales or purchases of real estate, that will be there for you.
I'm putting you on the spot here, but if somebody is going through a divorce and they need to call you to get in touch, what's just like something they could say on the phone, like like, hi, I am interested in working with you, or what's like a really simple script they could use?
Yeah. Hi, I'm interested in working with you. I have real estate and I'm going through a divorce and I'm not really sure what I'm going to do right now, but I would love to talk to you. I recently worked with someone who is still going through a divorce. She was initially interested in buying and then decided that she wanted to rent. And all of those decisions were made while we were working together. And we were easily able to sort of shift and pivot as her needs changed throughout the process. So, all you have to do is say real estate and divorce, and it's really that simple. We will walk you through the rest of it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Emily.
You're welcome.
Hello, everyone. My name is attorney Cynthia Cartier. I'm practicing in Connecticut. I have been practicing law for, I can't believe it, close to 35 years. And I focus primarily on family law and estate planning and all things related to family and elder law. Within the family process, I dedicated primarily to non-adversarial solutions to getting divorced, including mediation and collaborative work, which I find is most healing and beneficial for the couples involved.
Okay, so we have a question for you. We get this question a lot over here. So, when I'm going through a divorce, should I update my will and other estate planning documents? Should I update my healthcare proxy or power of attorney? I know this is a question I personally had going through my divorce. So, what do you say here?
Well, first of all, yes, but not until you complete the divorce process. So, unless you have an agreement and to make changes to any of your beneficiaries and any of your assets, you really can't do so without permission from the court or an agreement within the parties. So, during the divorce process, you don't want to make any changes. And when you look at your estate plan, there's different aspects. The will takes care of things after you pass away, including where does your property go, who would be the guardian of your children, how are the assets flow to the children, and the like. The living documents, which you mentioned, are the power of attorney, which handles, think about it as your financial documents or financial requirements, healthcare proxy, which deals with your medical care, and a living will, which is either pull the plug or not pull the plug document, as I actually like to call it. So essentially, you, with the will itself, you do not want to make any changes until after the divorce process is finalized, because in most states, you can't necessarily disinherit a spouse, and you're going to decide how you want to do things after you finalize the divorce. And even if you do it during the divorce process, even if you had an agreement to do so, you'd have to retitle the document potentially if your spouse is included there, because you'd be calling them spouse. So in order to avoid that, we recommend as soon as you finalize the divorce process, you redo the will. However, for the living documents, yes, you can absolutely change those during the course of the divorce, particularly if you don't have a close relationship with your spouse or there's some difficulties. They're not going to be the person that you necessarily would want to make those healthcare decisions, possibly, um, and and certainly not the person you're going to want to manage your money. So you can absolutely make changes to those documents. At a minimum, you do want to make changes to those after you divorce, of course, because again, unless you're going to have your spouse continue in those capacities, and even if you are, they're called spouse on the document, so you'd want to make those changes as well. Yes.
Wow, that was really helpful. And it's so much to think about when you're going through a divorce, right? It's just so much. So, I guess my question is, if somebody's listening to this and they're like in the divorce process, and they're like, okay, this is something I need to do. I don't want my spouse anywhere near any of my things, right? Who would be the person that they would call to do that? Is that the same as their divorce lawyer? Is that somebody else?
It could be. So some divorce lawyers do estate planning, some don't. So in my case, in our firm, we do. But if they don't, you'll ask them for either referral or go to somebody. But you want to make sure, if you're not using the same attorney, that the attorneys do talk to each other. Because again, you can make any delegations you want in your will, but if that goes against the estate plan of what you're trying to do, then go against the divorce of what you're trying to do, then that could be an issue or a problem. So you want to coordinate that. All right. So because during the divorce process, if you're litigating it, you're going to have automatic orders where you can't do certain things. You can't dispose of property. So God forbid you pass away and you've made changes to beneficiary designations, or you've made changes on accounts, that could be an issue that could come up in court or ultimately be litigated. So you don't want to make any changes unless you're consulting with your attorney. Again, if you're mediating it, you can make those changes together and make those decisions together. So it is a lot to think about. And I get that I get this all the time. I don't want my spouse to get anything. We're getting divorced. That's totally understandable. But you need to do it in the right way, and you need to do it, collaboratively, if at all possible, that sort of thing. So if that makes sense. And the other piece of this is that if you do have children, you may want, or, I do recommend when I do mediated settlements and such, that we do leave certain amount of life insurance to either the child or the other spouse, to make sure that there's resources, money there, both for childcare, for the raising of the child, depending on the age, for college expenses. So those are going to be the things we're going to discuss during the divorce process or during the mediated process. So again, I don't want them to make any changes until we have an agreement to do so.
I have one more kind of stupid question for you. So,
No, nothing stupid.
so, I come from a long line of divorce. Our whole family's divorced, and every branch of our family tree is split. And one of the, I come from a lot of lawyers as well. And one of the pieces of advice that was given to me was, don't say to your soon to be ex spouse that you're going to give them anything, or that you'll leave them the house, or this. Is there any
Yeah.
matter of fact in that, or is my family just kind of like worried about me? Is there something to be said, like if somebody was like, well, I told my ex-husband that they could have XYZ, does that really make a difference? Is there is there anything legal
Yeah.
in that verbal binding, or does it have to be on paper?
It has to be on paper. And the agreements that you may make during the course of the marriage, what I get a lot is my wife or my husband or my partner, whichever, is going to be getting money from their parents. Their parents are wealthy, their parents are going to leave them money. And now that I'm going to get divorced, I'm not going to have that money. The court does not contemplate future estate settlements in a litigated fashion because the money hasn't been realized. Anybody can change their will. So it doesn't count. Even money that's inherited within the course of the marriage, depending upon, there's a number of factors, when it was inherited, how long ago, what are the circumstances as to whether or not it's even considered marital property. And that depends state by state as well. So when we talk about promises you may make on, when you're like each other, when you're talking to each other, are very different, but they're not binding. However, if you sign a post-nup or prenup agreement that details something of that nature, then you could potentially be bound to it, depending on what you're agreeing to. If somebody has left you money in a trust and that trust money is there and it's being realized, again, depending on the nature of the trust, depending on the circumstances, more often than not, it's not marital asset. That's the reason why families oftentimes will put money in a trust for a child. I can't tell you how many times we've drafted trusts for couples where, for someone who wants to leave their child money, but they have a problem with the child's spouse, and they're concerned that whether the person is, has money issues, gambling issues, drug issues, or they just don't particularly care for that person, then we recommend you put it into a trust, because when you do so, depending on how the trust is written, that person doesn't have control over the asset. Again, so it really depends. So all those things have to be looked at the time you're divorcing. And again, whether you do it in a litigated fashion or mediated fashion, you'll make a decision as to how you come to agreements and things of that nature. So no, anything you may promise on the pillow talk is not going to hold up water in court.
Well, that's good to know. Okay. Well, this
So
is all
tell your
making
family they don't have to worry about
Okay,
you.
phew. This is a lot. It really is a lot, and I'm glad that there are people like you out there who can help support people through this. Are there any other words of wisdom that you could share when it comes to this issue before we go?
Sure. I think that the most important thing when you're going through divorce is to take a breath. What I find is that it is probably the most difficult and the most emotional thing that you will go through, short of losing a loved one or something of that nature. A lot of that is sort of generated by two things: fear and not being in control. So part of the way you gain control is to, consider a mediated process or alternative dispute process. Take a breath. Know that this too shall pass. You will get through it. Most people come out on the other side of divorce, feeling in a better place than they were going into it. So there is life after divorce, and it does work. But how you handle that and how you traverse through the process and how you treat each other and how you manage it will go a long way to getting you out of it in the best way possible. And particularly, I say this, if you have children, you are forever tied to that person. And how you guys handle this and how you manage it is really important, because your examples for your children, and you also have to continue to work together. So it's important to consider all of that as you traverse this world, this new world. But know that you also want to make sure you get some professionals in your corner, whether again you choose to do so mediating, you go the litigation route. You also want to look at getting a good financial planner or somebody to talk to about finances, accountant as well, to look at the accounting. So this way you're prepared and you have knowledge going into this.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And, having somebody like you in their corner is going to be huge. So if anybody wants to work with Cindy, you can go to Fresh Starts and find her over there, so you don't feel like your head is spinning like mine is just listening to it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Olivia. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Mara Bernstein, divorce attorney, certified divorce mediator, accredited collaborative divorce attorney with offices in Boca Raton, virtually throughout the state of Florida, and also licensed in New York State.
Okay, so we have a question for you today, which is a question we get a lot. What are the different types of alimony or spousal support arrangements? What does alimony even mean? How is alimony determined? And what factors kind of go into all of that? I know this is a lot of questions, but if you could give us like the idiot's guide here to some of these questions that I had no idea what alimony even meant when I was going through my divorce. So what do you say?
Of course, of course. So when we talk about alimony, it's called different things in different states. So you could also call it maintenance, you could call it spousal support, or you could call it alimony. And essentially what this is support for the less moneyed spouse. And what does less moneyed mean? So in the context of a marriage, if a spouse is taking care of the children during the marriage and the other spouse is working, the support is correlated to the length of the marriage and the need of the less moneyed spouse. Now, the law has changed so much in so many different states. For instance, in the state of Florida, it used to be the need of one spouse and the ability of another spouse. Now it's more formulaic. So it's 35% of the net difference in incomes. So when we talk about spousal support, we talk about amount. What will the amount be? And the duration. How long will the support go on for? And the duration is really tied to the length of the marriage. And each state has different specifications and different mandates and statutory requirements. In addition to that, so there's something called durational alimony. That's for the duration of the marriage. There's bridge the gap alimony to get people from being married to the status of being single. How do they need help in that regard? There's rehabilitative alimony for someone who has not been in the workforce. So there must be a plan in force in terms of getting the person to retool professionally. So there will be provisions and funds allocated for that person to be able to do so. And there's also temporary alimony in the context if you're negotiating a settlement or if you're in the context of litigation, people need support in terms of being able to move forward with their lives.
Yeah, I think there's like so much misconception about alimony, right? It's like, we hear like in movies and things, it's like, oh, I'm going to have to pay spousal support forever. Or I'm going to have to do this or that. But really what it comes down to, and I remember my lawyer saying this, is like both people just deserve to have a good life, right? So how can we kind of get there? Are there any
Great way of
yeah. Are there any other factors that people don't realize that play into alimony? I know you just described a few.
Yeah, so there are formulas that states often follow, but then there are a variety of factors: the health of each of the individual parties, if there are any special needs, children, special circumstances that would lead a court to award alimony outside of the statutory factors. Exceptional circumstances.
That's interesting.
So if someone who has a debilitating health condition,
right,
maybe alimony would go for a longer period of time.
Yeah, and I think a lot of we have a lot of women who are listening to this, and a lot of them are stay-at-home parents, or maybe we're out of the workforce, and so there are elements of alimony that will help, like you said, bridge that gap to let them kind of like get their feet back on the ground. This is a kind of a stupid question, but like how do you even, like, let's say you get alimony, how do you get that money? Like, is it like I mean, I know it's different from state to state, but is it like a check, or like, I know a lot of people like have logistical questions like that.
Yeah, it really is different state to state. I mean, for the most part, when we do marital settlement agreements, the payee tells the payor what the direct deposit account number will be. Sometimes, if someone is not paying their support, it goes into a state depository. But long gone are the days where, you're waiting at the mailbox waiting for a check.
Yeah. I remember being the kid handing the check to my parents. So I remember that. Yeah. That's really, really interesting. Any other thoughts on alimony or spousal support that would help people as they kind of put their ducks in a row while they get their divorce stuff together?
Yeah, listen, I know that there are a lot of women listening to this, and I represent a lot of women. I've been doing this for 30 years, and my main goal is empowering my clients. So I just want people to know that for the most part, alimony is modifiable. So God forbid something happens to the payer spouse, you always have to have a backup plan, because maybe he'll get sick, or she, maybe that person will lose their job. Maybe they'll just decide, F you, I don't want to pay anymore. So it's really, really, really important to have something of your own, regardless, a backup plan, a vocation. I have 2 daughters who are in college, and I say, no matter who you marry, no matter how rich that person is, no matter what family the person comes from, always have something of your own, because you never know what's going to happen. Alimony, the law only provides for so much. And then once you go into the court system, and many of the listeners could attest to this, there's no perfect resolution or solution, and it takes time and a lot of money to enforce support orders.
I was going to say that too. I 100% agree with you. That's my big motto in life too, is women should have their own money, but also you don't know, like you said, if someone just is not going to pay, right? It could be court ordered and they just maybe are going to decide, like you said, screw you, I'm not paying this. So making sure you have that, it can't be your only source of income. For sure.
Exactly. And there's one other kind of type of alimony, which is the best alimony to get it, but unfortunately it's not always feasible in cases, which is lump sum alimony. Let the person buy you out. So let's say there's, the duration is 10 years, and I'm not even going to get into exact numbers. And then we lump sum it out. We do the present value, and you get all the money up front. So you never have to, you could invest that money, get interest on that money, and you never have to rely on your ex to pay you on a monthly basis. That's the best kind of alimony to get.
Wow.
But unfortunately, in the vast majority of cases, unless there's lots and lots of money, it's difficult for people to do lump sum.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That is very helpful information. Thank you so much, Mara.
Of course.
Hi, my name is Jolie Vacchi, and I'm a family law and divorce attorney in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, and I'm the founding attorney of Foundations Family Law and Mediation Center.
Okay, Jolie, we have a question for you today that is a question we get a lot. So generally speaking, what happens? How is property divided up during a divorce? What factors kind of go into that? And what's considered? I think money obviously is very sensitive to a lot of people. So when you're looking at divorce, just from a general zoomed out perspective, what does this look like?
So this varies from state to state, but there's a lot of similarities across the lines. Massachusetts, where I practice, is an equitable distribution state. And what that really means is that the court is trying to divide the marital estate in a fair and reasonable way. And a lot of people assume that this would just mean that everything's split 50-50. And in some situations, it is pretty much split half for one spouse and half for the other. But that is just kind of like the starting point, and there's a lot more nuance that goes into this. So some of the factors that the court is going to want to consider is how long the marriage has been. If it's a short-term marriage, for example, if it's only 6 months or even a couple of years, there's much more likelihood that, property owned by one spouse prior to the marriage would stay with that individual spouse rather than been split up between the two parties. Whereas if there's been a couple that's been married for 20 years, then the court would probably be more inclined to take everything owned by everybody and divide that more equally. So the length of the marriage is a really important factor. The court is also going to want to look at how old are the parties? What is their health? Are they employed, or do they have the ability to become employed? What's their earning potential in the future? Because if one spouse has been out of the workforce for an extended period of time, or maybe there's a health condition that is, hindering them from making a similar income to their spouse, the court's going to consider this when they're dividing up the property and maybe give that one spouse a little bit more. Another thing is they're going to look at the conduct of the parties during the marriage. And this can be a little bit misleading because most people nowadays are divorcing on no fault grounds, meaning that you don't have to prove that your spouse was an adulterer or that they abandoned you. You don't have to show a reason to not want to be married anymore. You just want to get divorced, and that's good enough to the court. But the court will consider the conduct of the parties. For example, if one party has an extramarital affair, that's not going to be used for a reason for the divorce to be granted. But if this person spent a substantial amount of the marital assets on this extramarital affair, well, then maybe some of that should be credited back to the other spouse. So that's a way that it could be considered. Another one that's common for the conduct of the parties is gambling. So if one party has a gambling habit that the other one doesn't know about and has, I've had cases like this where there's been hundreds of thousands of dollars spent behind one spouse's back. That could be also considered when dividing the remaining marital estate to compensate the innocent spouse for all of that dissipation of the marital assets. And then finally, some other things that come to mind are the court's going to look at how did this marital estate come to be built? Was it because both parties were working? Was one party working and the other one was a stay-at-home parent? We have some cases where one spouse is working, the other one's not working, but they either don't have children or they have caretakers for the children. So that spouse who isn't really contributing to making an income for the family or helping with the children, maybe they wouldn't be entitled to a split amount. So everything is looked at globally. One factor isn't more important than the other. And the judges in family court have wide discretion. So you could take the same set of facts and present it to different judges and get two totally different outcomes, which can be tough. And, as a divorce attorney, that's one of the hardest parts of my job because there's no guarantees here. All I can do is to try to guide my clients as best as possible. And something that's really important to me and that I instill into my clients is I really encourage them to try to negotiate a settlement rather than leaving all of these issues up to a stranger, because if you're in control of the terms of your settlement, you're choosing those terms and you know what you're going to get. Whereas you're just taking a total gamble if you were going to let the judge decide all of these important issues for you.
That's a really interesting point, Jolie. And just can you give us like an overview of what that term property even entails?
Mm-hmm.
Really, what is property, right? Like, because maybe somebody's listening to this and they're like, well, we rent our house, or do we have property? Like, what does property mean in a divorce?
Yeah, so property in Massachusetts, where I practice, and I think a lot of other jurisdictions too, it's everything owned by the parties. So it could be owned by just one of the spouses in their own individual name. It could be a car they own, or a business they own, or even a piece of property that's only in their name, but that's still considered part of the marital estate. So everything that's in either party's name individually or jointly. It can be real property. It can be personal property. So all of the tangible things that you have in your home, your house furnishings. And then also when we're talking about dividing property in the family court context, we're not only dividing the assets, but also the court is going to divide who pays the debts. So that also comes into play into this conversation, whether it be credit card debts, student loans, mortgages, car loans, all of that, it has to be part of this conversation too, but everything is considered.
Yeah, that's interesting. In my case, it was musical instruments. There was a lot of property there.
Yep.
And, different people have, it could be sports memorabilia, right? It could be all sorts of different inherited pieces of art. Yeah, very, very interesting. That was super helpful. And yeah, I think that, people get so tripped up in a lot of this stuff because it's confusing. Is this where, I know when I was going through my divorce, I had to do an inventory. Is this kind of where that inventory plays into play, like a little bit?
Yeah, exactly. So when we're dividing up things in what we call like the marital home, so we have both parties usually create a list of things that are important to them to see how we're going to divide it up. And also some things that people might not immediately come to mind, but has been it is important when you think about it is like digital assets. So especially like family photos nowadays, like they could be all on one, computer.
Wow.
And then we need to make terms about getting those files copied and provided to the other party. So there's so much out there that you potentially don't even think about, but there's a lot of things. And to be honest with you, it's usually not cost effective to pay your attorneys to divide up your personal property. It would cost more for the attorneys to do it than the actual items that you're fighting about. So a lot of times what we do is like each party there'll be a list of things that they're each going to take. And then the contested items, what we do is we have them each pick one at a time. Okay, you go first. What's the most important thing here? Then it's the other party's turn. And then we just go through that until everything's divided. And I mean, sentimental things, obviously those are important, but I've had clients fight over grills, vacuum cleaners, like things like that.
Vacuum cleaner is, we yeah,
if you get a good vacuum cleaner, like I get
Dyson. A Dyson is really
it's good, but you could always go out and just get a newer one. It will, it won't be a depreciated value. It'll probably run better. And then, save yourself those attorney's fees and just get yourself a new blender or whatever it is.
Yes, we know somewhere you can go register for those things too. So that's great advice. Super, super great advice. I think that especially, I know you take a very holistic approach to your practice, and you really want people to not be overspending and to really like very humanistic side to law. So I appreciate your point of view. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for your kind words.
Hey, I am Jen Reed. I'm a financial planner and money mindset coach. I really work with people who want to manage their money, organize their finances so that they can save more, pay off debt, and really learn to invest so they can grow their wealth and live a life they really desire and love. And I work with small groups or one-on-one. And I love helping every one of my clients avoid high fees and really get to understand and be an involved CFO within their personal finances.
Okay, Jen, we have a question that we get a lot over here at Fresh Starts, and you are the person to answer this. So the question goes like this. Hi, Fresh Starts. I'm going through a divorce, and I'm just curious, how can I protect my assets and my investments during the divorce? And this comes up a lot, especially because, as you know, I think the easy investment like ways have come out in the last 10 years, and people have all sorts of acorns and this, not whatever investment stuff. So if you have investments and all these assets, how can you protect them during your divorce, Jen? What do you say?
Yeah, if you do not have a prenup in place or even a postnup in place, starting to really separate your accounts, and anything now moving forward should really be your account in your name, nothing going into joint accounts overall. So you want to make sure that your income is being directly deposited into this new account, and you're really starting to track and manage everything that you've been contributing to the household as a whole. So even if you can go back a little bit and start to understand what expenses have you been paying for, what have you been contributing to the savings accounts or the IRAs or your 401ks, that's going to be really, really important.
Yeah, super important. So much of like the early stages of divorce is just taking an inventory of everything, right? So what are your thoughts on, this is like more of a general statement, but on women especially, like having their own bank account for things, even if you're not putting a lot in there. We get a lot of questions from women who are like, I'm going through the divorce and I don't have access to the finances. What would you recommend to somebody about maybe setting up their own bank account? Do you have anything you could recommend to make this process easier for people?
Yeah, I think that getting copies of financial statements, really seeing if you can understand what's been going on in those bank statements, start to get the login informations, tax returns, You're looking for the deed on the house, mortgage statements, any benefit packages that have come through, just starting to acquire some of those statements and those, the transactions that have been going through and just the paperwork behind all of this. If your name's on the accounts, you can call up the bank and ask them for a refreshed login. Because I work with plenty of people who are like, oh my gosh, I haven't logged into this account ever. I don't know how to get in, or my husband has this account, or my wife has, the login information. If your name's on the account, you should be able to call the institution and get access to these accounts. So just starting to get that information and getting logged in will be important.
That's really helpful information. And just so people, because we have a lot of women listening and men too, but people listening, I know you work a little bit differently with people because you work with everybody. You don't have to have a high net worth to have a financial planner, right? That's a myth that you are really passionate about busting. And so if you are, let's say, a single mom, or you're just through a divorce or whatever, how can you work with them, Jen, as a financial planner to really set them up for success as they move forward?
Yeah, it goes back to just that understanding around what's going on with your finances. So if you haven't been managing it, it's starting to put in those good habits and creating these money meetings for yourself where you can check in and understand what expenses have been going out, especially if you have kids involved. If you're going to be separating those expenses now, what does that look like? If you're splitting up the house payments now, like what does it look like to live on your own, and being aware of all of that. I think it's just the awareness and how to start these things on your own, and giving you the confidence too that you can start your own IRA and you can build your own retirement accounts now that you're pulling away and separating from this marriage. And it's super important to feel confident around that and not like it's going to be a struggle, because you can build wealth on your own. It just takes that time and extra set of eyes on everything.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I'm somebody I have ADHD and money scares me and all the things. And so if there are other people like me out there, do you literally just work with your clients and like setting this stuff up and getting it off the ground and all of, like, I know you are also a mindset financial coach as well. So when you partner with your clients, like, I know you probably hold their hand a lot. So what does that look like? Like all those little things that you can do.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest part, is we know what to do, but the success comes when we actually do what we know. So it's in the action afterwards. So one of the biggest things is setting up those money meetings, and I get to be a part of them for a fair part of the beginning, because it's I'm holding your hand, setting up the account. We're walking through what the accounts look like. There's time and space to talk through cash flow and your budget and where money's been going, or, logging into bank accounts. I think that's a huge one. I was just talking with a client about.
Jen. I hate it. I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
It's the hardest thing for her. She's like, I know I'm putting money on these credit cards and I just pay it off, but I don't look at it. I don't want to look at it. And sometimes that peace of mind comes when you just open up the account, see it, have it in front of you, and then it brings this relief, and the stress starts to slowly escape after you've faced your fear.
It's so funny, Jen. As I'm talking to you, I'm laughing because I feel like I had almost the same conversation with Jackie Golub, who is a sex therapist. And I feel like it's like the same topic, right? Money and sex go hand in hand in so many ways, right? And so it's the same shame and confusion and needing somebody to just really help you. I think I can't underestimate the value of working with somebody like you, Jen, during a divorce, especially as a single mom, especially as a mom who maybe was a stay-at-home parent, who didn't have the awareness of the accounts that were happening and ran everything or whatever. To work with you, who, we love you, you're friendly, you're welcoming, you're gentle, but to say like, hey, you got this, right? Like, we're going to figure out your finances together. You may only be making a little bit of money, but that's okay, right? We can still figure out how to make this work. So I highly recommend, if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm going through this, I feel totally lost, I know I need a financial planner, you can, right? It's not just for people that are like super, super wealthy. And I think that's something you talk a lot about.
Yeah. And I think it just creates a safe space to start talking about money. I know just being married and having conversations around money, sometimes it's hard because one person's a spender, the other one's a saver. One's been good with money, one came in with a lot of debt, or they both came in with a lot of debt. And there's shame and guilt and judgment all wrapped up into this, which is why they haven't been talking about it or paying attention to it in the first place. So it's getting on a really good page with having these really important conversations, because money touches everything and it gives you so much opportunity for your family and your life.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just watching a clip of an old I Love Lucy episode, and one of the characters said, there's two types of people in this world, spenders and savers, otherwise known as husbands and wives, right? And it's like, there's, like you said, there's someone's always one thing or the other, right? Well, I appreciate all this wisdom, Jen. And if anybody's listening and wants that helping hand as you move through this process and wants to dig in with a beautiful mindset and figure it out, please reach out to Jen. Jen, thank you as always for your words of wisdom.
Appreciate it, Olivia.
Before we sign off, a quick reminder. The information shared in today's podcast episode is for general knowledge purposes only. It is not intended as legal advice. We are here to support people through divorce, but when it comes to legal matters, be sure to consult with a qualified professional. Thank you for listening to today's story. We're always here, and we're so proud of you.
A Fresh Story is produced by Fresh Starts Registry, the first and only platform for everything you need to begin again. You can read the show notes and learn more about today's episode at afreshstory.com.